There's a quick check off the highway not too far away from where I live. It's the only thing open 24/7 in my rural middle-of-nowhere town. It's about a 25-minute drive if I'm speeding, which I usually am. So to translate for all you city folk, it's basically right next door. My sleep schedule is beyond atrocious, so I've been to that quick check more than a handful of times. I like to think I'm pretty generic looking and nondescript, meaning I blend in well, but it wouldn't surprise me if some of the late-night workers recognize me by now. This happened just last week, so most of the details are still painfully fresh in my mind. It was past midnight, and I was coding on my laptop. My productivity and focus peaked between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., so I was in that flow state that any hard worker craves. The problem with late-night grinding is that you go from perfectly comfortable to dying of hunger in a matter of minutes, which is exactly what prompted me to shut things down and grab something to eat around the reasonable hour of 2 a.m. Just so you have an understanding of everything, I should mention that the highway leading to the quick check is more of a local road than an interstate, so it's usually pretty dead. The ride there was relatively uneventful. I pulled into the quick check, ordered a sandwich from one of the counters, and roamed the aisles while I waited. The mix of caffeine I'm usually stimmed out on and the ADHD I was born with makes it difficult for me to sit still, so I was just kind of pacing around one of the corners of the store when I noticed something. Facing one of the refrigerators that lined the back of the store was a person sitting crisscross on the ground. It was such an odd sight that I initially overlooked it, then snapped my head back around to make sure I hadn't imagined it, and I hadn't. There was literally a person sitting on the ground at the end of the aisle, facing the refrigerator like he was examining it. I couldn't see anything other than the brown coat and jeans he was wearing. I needed to get a better look at this guy, at his face at least, so I walked a few aisles down. My plan was to turn the corner really quickly, get a good look at him, then turn back up one of the aisles, ideally before he noticed me looking. Staring at strangers so explicitly is obviously really rude, so I didn't want him to catch me doing it. I was trying to be inconspicuous about it, or at least appear like I was browsing the snacks, but I guess I didn't do a good job of that because as soon as I turned the corner to look at him, he whipped his head around and stared back at me. His movement was so abrupt that I actually froze up for a few seconds, forgetting what I was even doing there in the first place. And let me tell you, one look at this guy confirmed he was far from normal. Forget about the sitting on the ground and staring into the refrigerator. This guy was definitely on something, which I could tell from his abnormally wide eyes and the way his lip was vibrating, like it was fully quivering, almost as if he were cold, except it was actually kind of hot in there. And he was also wearing a jacket. His posture was all twisted up too, like he was straining instead of sitting, if that makes any sense. But the worst thing by far was the look he was giving me. He wasn't smiling, and he wasn't scowling either. He was staring blankly at me with this deady stare that made it kinda seem like he actually was dead. The whole scene was freaky as hell. After staring at each other for an uncomfortable amount of time, I finally averted my eyes and dipped up one of the aisles, eager to get my food and leave. It wasn't ready yet, though. I stood at the counter and waited, and the anxiety was getting to me, so I angled myself to face the corner of the store where the guy had been sitting. I was half expecting him to emerge from one of the aisles, at which point I'm not sure what I would have done, but he never did. Eventually, my food was ready. I promptly left the store without another thought. I thought that was the end of it, but as I was turning to get back on the highway, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I glanced back towards the store and saw a person running full speed from the store entrance to the far end of the parking lot. I was already halfway onto the highway at that point, but as soon as I saw what looked like a brown coat, I knew it was him. As I drove past the quick check, I looked over at it one more time to see that that guy was now jumping into a truck. I didn't even want to imagine what a guy like that could possibly be rushing to do at 2 a.m. I was just happy I had nothing to do with it. I sped off, just wanting to get home in peace. After a few minutes, the last of the fluorescent storefront lights faded into darkness behind me, and I was driving through desolate nothingness once again. I'm used to being the only car on the road when it's that late at night, which is why it was so surprising when I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. But it was even more surprising when I realized the headlights were getting closer, meaning they were going faster than me, and I wasn't exactly driving the speed limit. My first thought was that I was about to get pulled over, so I instinctively slowed down a bit. The headlights kept approaching, and I knew what was about to happen. Police lights were about to start flashing, and my night was about to be ruined. But once the car finally got close enough, I realized it wasn't a cop. It was that guy from the Quick Check. It was the same car from the parking lot. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I slammed my foot back on the gas and got back up to speed. The guy behind me started flashing his lights at me and honking, and I didn't know what to do. Try and outrun him or pull over and just pray that he'd keep going. I was in a sedan and he was driving a pickup truck, so I figured I could outrun him. The faster I went, though, the more terrified I became. I can only describe that feeling as true terror, the feeling that you're literally approaching death. By the time I had gotten up to 100 miles per hour, the voice in my head was screaming that I was going to die if I kept accelerating. I swerved into the right lane, hoping he'd shoot by me, but instead he actually swerved to stay behind me. I started slowing down with the intention of pulling over on the shoulder, but the moment I took my foot off the gas, the truck actually rammed into me. I grabbed the wheel to stabilize the car and realized I was in a life-or-death situation. The guy yelling me was trying to kill me. Everything was happening so fast, I couldn't think. I knew he was going to try and ramming me again, and at that speed, I knew I'd be lucky not to spin out. I don't know if it was the terror or my survival instincts kicking in, but the moment I saw him go for it, I swerved to the left and slammed on the brakes. The truck shot past me, and I watched as he swerved back and forth a few times before spinning out and shooting off the highway. Despite how violently my hands were shaking and how terrified I was, I forced myself to start driving again. I sped the entire way home. As soon as I got inside, I called the police and reported the incident, although I don't have any exact coordinates since I did shoot off the highway. They took my statement anyway, and I was happy to give it. I know for a fact that Quick Check had security cameras in their parking lot, so I'm pretty confident they'll end up catching that guy. It's only been a week since this happened, but I haven't heard anything yet. My car isn't dinged up too badly, but I still need to get it repaired. As for why in the world that guy had gone after me, your guess is as good as mine. I just hope I never see him again. This happened in the summer of 2022. I was 25 and working what I guess you'd call an unusual logistics job. I was hauling refurbished electronics and custom PC parts for this last-mile delivery startup that was trying to compete with Amazon in weird rural markets. The routes were long and completely erratic. Sometimes I'd be driving for 12 hours straight, often through the night, hitting these remote parts of the Southwest that most delivery companies refuse to touch. The pay was decent enough to make it worth it, and I didn't mind the long drive, since I had grown up in a road-tripping type family. This particular night, I was deep into the final leg of a Phoenix to Lovington run. It was around 1 in the morning, and I was winding through this desolate stretch of Route 82, past the outskirts of Lincoln National Forest in southern New Mexico. If you've never driven through that area at night, it's hard to describe how isolated it feels. The road is narrow and poorly lit. You might see another car every 20 or 30 minutes if you're lucky. But here's the thing about that particular stretch. It's also the only accessible route cutting through the area for miles. The GPS alternatives would add like 2 hours to the trip, winding you way north through Carrizozo or something like that. So if you needed to get from point A to point B in that part of New Mexico, you pretty much have to take Route 82. Anyway, I was listening to some true crime podcasts when I rounded this bend and saw a red hatchback awkwardly pulled onto the gravel shoulder with its hazards flashing. I slowed down a bit out of habit. As I got closer, my headlights illuminated a woman standing next to the car. She was holding her phone high in the air like she was trying to catch a signal. My first instinct was to just drive past. I mean, I'm not heartless, but I'm also not naive about the kinds of situations you can walk into in that part of the state at that time of night. But then I started thinking about my own girlfriend or my sister and how I would want someone to stop if they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. Plus, I wasn't completely defenseless. I had a Glock 43 holstered underneath my steering column. I never explicitly got permission from the company to arm myself, but given some of the areas we delivered to, it seemed like common sense to me. I slowed down and cracked the passenger door a couple of inches. The woman, who didn't seem much older than me, rushed over immediately and tried my passenger door handle, which was locked. She said she needed a ride to the nearest gas station and claimed her car had just died and she couldn't get anyone on the phone. Her voice had this jittery quality to it, like she was either really stressed or maybe on something. I hesitated for a few seconds. The situation felt a little off, but what tipped the scale was knowing I had a firearm within reach. I figured if things got sketchy, I'd be able to handle myself.